Hi, I am thrilled to be here with my very good friend, colleague, member of Zestworks team, Heather Darnell. Heather, in a nutshell, just tell people what you do, because I know you deal with that numbers, finance, scary side of business, what some people think is
the fun side of the business.
Got ya.
I help people with all the number side of their business, from helping set it up to helping them understand their numbers once they finally get some, i.e. their first sale. Help them with their accounts, help them understand their numbers, and sometimes even help pricing or projecting.
Right.
Really, anything with a pound sign on it is what I help with.
Got you. And this is really important. Just today I was speaking to somebody, a new client, who's been in business for some time. She's running a successful business, but the business is growing, and now she's saying to me that one of the things that she's mindful about is the money, the finance side. And it is an issue that brings so many issues up. It's the great thing because we all want to be paid, we all want to run a successful and profitable business. But it's the kind of thing that sometimes just for people isn't their skill set, or they weren't good at maths at school.
Or forget if even if it's not your skill set. No one's born knowing how to do financial business math. It is different. So no one knows it when they're born, no one's taught it at school, and unless you've done it as a speciality in higher education, how would you ever know how to run a P&L or what a balance sheet is?
And this is one of the things why I'm so keen to interview you, because I think you have a wonderful way of just cutting all the nonsense out of it and just speaking in plain English about this kind of stuff. I guess you've already answered that first question I was going to ask you. Why is it so difficult for people? What are all the different issues that are in this mix here?
Well, I think there's two things. Number one, as I said before, most people don't know about it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, it's not intuitive and it's not common sense. It's really specialized knowledge you need. So that's one reason why people aren't too keen to get into it. Secondly, most people started a business because they love whatever it is. No one starts a business because they can't wait to get to the behind-the-scenes finance side of it.
And this is an important point, because I think that, I'm interviewing you partly about this particular book, which you've kindly given a lot of your expertise to, because lots of people, they are sole traders, i.e. they're running a business that they're passionate about. Yeah. Sometimes it is just them, they are their business, and sometimes they're growing that business. So I think you put your finger on it, they're wanting to get on with what they're passionate about, which is whatever their expertise is.
And most of the time, I find what they're afraid of are actually, in the real world, quite small things. But if you only knew about them before you started up.
So give me an example. What are those kind of small things that they're a bit scared of?
Well, the most important thing, I think, that they're probably scared of what they don't know, so they don't know what they don't know. Right. But there probably are literally a handful of things, less than 5 things, that if you know in the beginning and you set it up from then, your life will be very, very easy. Number one, and most importantly, is making sure you have a separate bank account for your business. Right. Whether you're a sole trader or a limited company or a partnership is immaterial.
So this is the real fundamentals for when you're starting from scratch. Be mindful. You need to separate.
Absolutely.
You need to separate that kind of stuff out, right?
Absolutely. So number one, make sure you get a separate bank account. It will make all your future record keeping so much easier. Another thing you need to decide at the very, very beginning is how you're going to track your expenses. Now, that might sound ridiculously simple, but for some people, they throw away half the receipts. I don't care if you just find a box someplace that you put it in, or whether you actually separate it out in a nice folder by month, or whatever you do. And actually, nowadays, there's so many great apps out there where you can take a picture of your receipts with your smartphone, and it gets sent off into the ether. Someone else manages it for you, so you can actually throw it away. So it actually doesn't matter which system you use, but that you have a system and that you've thought about it. And one thing I always tell people when they start up, if you're not quite sure whether it's a business expense or not, err on the side of caution and keep it. Let your accountant say to you, no, that's not allowable, or yes, that is. Because there's nothing worse than trying to recreate a picture from a year ago when your accountant tells you, oh, by the way, you can put in all your travel costs.
Right, and presumably this thing about getting to the habit of, so first of all you said making sure you have that separate account, which in some instances you're going to have separately anyway, and then this thing about tracking your finances, that's presumably also a really good habit for as people are developing their business, that they're beginning to be just comfortable or mindful that it is that they've got to manage that. One of the most lovely phrases I've ever heard about that is that when it comes to finances, you can delegate the responsibility, but you can't abdicate the responsibility in terms of your business.
That's absolutely right.
Right.
And actually that feeds perfectly into the third thing I think you need to know when you start out a business, which is exactly what are the deadlines you need to report to different government bodies, whether it's HMRC for tax, whether it's Companies House for if you're a limited company, if you actually are going to take on any employees, there are different deadlines. If you're VAT registered, you have different ones. They're actually all very, very simple. But if you write them down, put them in your calendar, whether it's Outlook or iCal, no matter what it is.
Or no paper diary like me.
I still use a paper diary, I love them. Put it in now and always remind you. You know, I also put in a reminder, depending on what it is. If it's corporation tax, I put a reminder in 3 months beforehand, so that you know that if you make those dates, you're never going to get in trouble.
Right.
There will never be a penalty.
Right.
And even if you don't have perfect figures, you know, if you submit something on time, as long as you've used your best faith to it, you can correct it later.
Right. I want to ask you about something which is, I guess in a way, slightly kind of controversial, or seemingly controversial. One of the first people that somebody may well need in their business, or is going to be advantageous that they have, is a bookkeeper or an accountant, or both. And presumably it's going to be very, very important that you pick wisely, or you decide what kind of support it is that you need, in order that you're able to know what it is you need to find out, like your VAT, when that's due, and so on and so on. Can you just tell us a little bit about, just for those people again who might not know, in a nutshell, in a sentence, the role of a bookkeeper, the role of an accountant, and when you might need what, and how to get the best out of them? Because I know we've had conversations about this, and you often only along the journey you realise what you should be looking for, what your accountant should or shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely. It's a great point, because you're right. One of the first external pieces of help you need as a business owner is an accountant. And it's purely because the law requires you to submit certain things in a certain way every year. Now, every business is different, and every business needs a different level of work. If you are a one-man band and you don't have lots and lots of transactions, it's perfectly reasonable to either do all of your bookkeeping yourself, which is simply a structured keeping of records. That's all bookkeeping is. Keeping a structured, records of your business, both money in and money out. And then the accounts, which happens at the year end. If you're a sole trader, it will be on the 31st of March, technically 5th of April, but you think of it as the end of March. Your self-assessment tax return must go in. And for those things, if it's really a simple business, you can find an accountant that does just that, that doesn't offer a lot of other advice or help you with deciding what direction to go in or giving you advice about growing. For lots of people, it's completely sufficient to pay an accountant once a year, £500, do their accounts and be done with it. The times when it's really useful to engage your accountant is either when you're going into a new area. That could be a new geographic area, like you're selling in the States for the first time. It could be if you're about to do online selling for the first time. It could be when you're thinking about maybe bringing on your first employee, because there's lots of new rules and regulations about that. If you're looking to move premises, you might have been working in your back bedroom for years and now you're ready to take on your first office space. That's a great time to talk to an accountant. If you're thinking of diversifying your product range, or maybe even just changing your pricing of your existing products, those are all great times to talk to your accountant. And I would say in general, it's your responsibility to go to your accountant and tell them there's a change coming up. Some accountants are brilliant at being really proactive and asking to talk to you once a quarter to get an update, but if I'm honest, most of them aren't. So it's really, it's incumbent upon you to reach out to them.
Got you, because I know we've talked about this before, that sometimes, and again, as you said, depending on the accountant, some accountants will be first and foremost and understandably concerned with ensuring that you comply and you deliver the accounts when you need to, and they may not necessarily be as proactive. So you need to be very clear. You
bring up a brilliant point as well, and that's the massive difference between accountancy and finance. Accountants are all about compliance. It's making sure you comply with the law, that things are reported in a certain way, at a certain time, and in a certain format. And that is an incredibly important job.
So presumably, I guess that when somebody is going on this journey as a business owner, and hopefully they're doing what they love, and they've been, hopefully that they've set up their accounts in the right way, they've engaged with an accountant or a bookkeeper, or they're doing stuff themselves and so on, and then they're mindful about when they need that additional support. Presumably, if they're lucky, or if their ambition is that they're going to grow, when they're growing, or when they're wanting to take on staff, or things are diversifying, as you indicate, that may well be a time for them to engage with an accountant, and perhaps that might be a time where actually they need to start thinking about the kind of finance support. Some businesses that bigger, they might have a finance director, and so on. Tell us a little bit about that, because presumably when those businesses are beginning to grow, there's a number of different issues, and one of the issues that we touch on, and funny enough in the book, was a contact of mine who I directed you at a point whereby his business was growing. There were more numbers issues that he needed to grapple with. What would happen if we sell this number? What happened if we sell those kind of numbers where you might need a finance director? Can you just tell us a little bit about that? And if you've got any thoughts or any pointers of when somebody should be starting to think about whether they have doing what you're doing. For example, we're in the offices of one of your clients that you act as a finance director, not full time, or where they might be looking to bring someone in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And actually, the range is really, really broad. I would say in the early days, it is about engaging with a finance helper for specific projects, for setting things up, or say even once a year setting a budget. We've got lots of clients that we have a big proper annual meeting at, where we review the last year or year's figures and together work out a budget for the coming year. So on the cost side, it's relatively simple. You look at your history. We also say what other businesses of your size, what typically their costs are. But really the sales forecast is a really important thing that almost only the business owner can do. They've got that specialist knowledge, and finance function can help tease it out. But you do need the knowledge the business owner has. So one very typical finance help is the kind of annual budget setting. If you're really good, you also make sure you get a touch point every quarter or so and compare your actuals to your budget. Because it's no good waiting a year and then seeing how you've done. You want to kind of get some touch points earlier on to say, you know what, spot on, well done, everything's going according to plan. Or you're slightly below your numbers. Were you just being over-optimistic?
Or things have changed, that something's come along major that you need to consider or reevaluate. VAT's gone up, or other issues in your marketplace, or raw materials have gone up, or whatever it might well be.
And even oddly, breaking through your numbers, doing better than planned, has its own set of issues. Whether it means you might need to get a bigger premises soon, or you haven't put aside enough for your tax bill, or whatever that may be. So that's a very common thing you would use a finance function for. Another thing would be if you needed financing, whether it was bank loans or looking for crowdsourcing, or even friends and family investment who need to see a little bit more than just your smiling face saying, I need some money, trust me, it will all work out.
Right, so straight away a question comes to my mind. What's your take on how somebody finds that kind of support for them, especially when they're a small business? How do you find that? Because a lot of the stuff when you're running a small business, you'll meet people and you'll trust, hopefully they've got the expertise, and hopefully you get on with them personally. But can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the things to look out for in terms of selecting somebody?
The best thing is a recommendation from someone you know.
And trust.
Truly. Truly. Because first of all, there's all different types of people in the world out there, and not everyone speaks in the right way for that person and how they understand things. So if you can get a recommendation from someone you know and trust, or you know and is like you, and they've had a good experience, I'd say that's the number one most important thing. After that, I really do think almost every accountant or finance person in the world will have an initial meeting with you for no charge. They all will. And I think you should take advantage of that. I think you should really shop around.
Because you can tease and you can question, you can find out what they actually know. Here's where I am, here's where I'm at, what would you do? And you'll get a good sense. You get a lot of information
in that first meeting. You can really get a lot of information. And you can also get the sense of either, they know my industry, they know what I'm talking about, or I feel as though I can talk to them.
And I think that one thing that's important that I find is that ensuring, do they speak in plain English to you? Ask questions, because if if you're afraid of asking somebody who's helping with your finance questions, you're in trouble.
You're
aren't you? You
right.
really are in trouble, because that's one person that you need to be able to be absolutely clear with and to be able to trust on their counsel.
And you should never let them intimidate you by using language you don't understand. If someone starts babbling depreciation, amortization, EBITDA at you, and you don't know what they're talking about, you really, it's your right, and I believe your responsibility to say to them, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you say that again in a way I understand?
Wonderful.
And if they can't, there's something wrong with them, not something wrong with you.
Yeah.
If they can't explain these concepts in a simple way in plain English, they don't understand.
Wonderful.
it.
Well, I think that's a wonderful moment to pause. I want to come back in a while and touch on if there's any other key financial things that you would say, things to watch out, recommendations, or themes that come up a lot for business owners, although we've already touched on quite a number. But I think I'm also very keen, because you are in this book and you also know what it's like, you run a business.
I've done it myself.
You've done it yourself. I want to talk a little bit about you, your journey. What is business for you, and how, and what business means for you, and how can you carry on having that joy for your business? So I'm going to leave you to smile at the camera and to
read the book a little bit,
and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about you and your story. But thank you.
Okay.